The dragon's orb had been floating in the same spot for 3,000 years. It sat in the middle of the Temple of Vael, hanging in the air inside a beam of soft silver light. The orb was about the size of a human head, and it glowed with colors that seemed to change every second. Sometimes it looked like fire. Sometimes it looked like water. Sometimes it looked like the heart of a dying star. Nobody knew who made it. The oldest books called them the Forgotten Ones. They were a species so ancient that even the oldest living creatures in the galaxy had never seen them. They had disappeared long ago, leaving behind only this single object, this orb, this mystery. Every species in the galaxy wanted it. The Lorans tried first. They were tall creatures with 4 arms and skin like gray stone. Their warriors were famous across 100 star systems. They sent their strongest fighter, a giant named Bora, to claim the orb. He walked into the temple with his head held high. He made it 8 steps before he fell. His eyes turned white. Blood came from his nose and ears. He screamed for 3 days before he finally died. The doctors said his mind had been burned from the inside. The Shael tried next. They were beautiful beings made of living crystal. Light passed through their bodies like sunshine through glass. They believed their telepaths could understand the orb, could speak to it, could make it theirs. Their greatest mind speaker floated toward the orb with confidence. She made it 6 steps, then she shattered. Her crystal body broke into 1,000 pieces that scattered across the temple floor. The Keth believed they would succeed where others failed. They had no bodies at all. They were beings of pure energy, floating clouds of light and thought. Surely, they reasoned, a creature without flesh could not be harmed by the orb's defenses. They were wrong. The Keth who approached the orb simply vanished. One moment, he existed. The next moment, he was gone, as if he had never been real at all. After 1,000 failures, the Galactic Council made a law. No one was allowed to approach the dragon's orb. The temple became a museum, a place where beings from across the universe came to look at something they could never touch. Guards stood at every entrance. Warning signs covered every wall. The orb floated in its silver light, patient and silent, waiting for something that might never come. Then the humans arrived. They were the youngest species anyone had ever met. They had only been traveling between stars for about 100 years. Compared to the Lorans, who had been exploring space for 50,000 years, humans were like babies taking their first steps. They had no telepathy. They could not transform their bodies. They could not turn into energy or crystal or stone. They were just soft, fragile creatures with short lives and loud voices. The Galactic Council allowed them to join, mostly because it seemed rude to say no. Humans were given a small seat at the edge of the Great Hall. They were invited to ceremonies and meetings. But nobody really listened to what they said. They were too young, too simple, too ordinary. Ambassador Yuna came to Vael for a trade meeting. It was supposed to be a boring trip. Just 3 days of talking about shipping routes and mineral prices. She brought her son with her because she had no choice. Her husband had died 2 years ago, and she had no family on Earth who could watch the boy. So 12-year-old Tay came along, carrying a backpack full of books and a tablet loaded with games. Tay was a quiet child. He had his father's dark eyes and his mother's stubborn chin. He liked reading old stories about heroes and dragons. He liked looking at stars through his bedroom window. He did not like formal dinners or political speeches or wearing uncomfortable clothes. The trade meeting was, in his opinion, the most boring thing that had ever happened in the history of the universe. On the second day, while his mother was locked in a conference room arguing about transport fees, Tay decided to explore. The guards at the diplomatic building barely noticed him leave. He was just a small human boy, after all. What trouble could he possibly cause? The Temple of Vael was only a short walk away. Tay had seen pictures of it in his tablet's encyclopedia. The building was enormous, made of white stone that seemed to glow from within. Tall pillars rose toward the sky like fingers reaching for the stars. The entrance was open. Tourists walked in and out, taking pictures, speaking in hushed voices. Tay walked inside. The air in the temple felt different, cooler, cleaner. It smelled like rain, and old books, and something else, something he could not name. He followed the flow of visitors through hallways lined with ancient symbols, past displays showing the history of the orb, past holographic images of all the creatures who had died trying to claim it. And then he saw it. The dragon's orb floated in the center of a vast circular room. Silver light fell upon it from somewhere high above. Ropes and barriers kept visitors far away, at least 20 meters from the orb itself. Warning signs in 100 languages told everyone to stay back. But Tay barely noticed the signs. He barely noticed the other visitors. He barely noticed anything at all, except the orb itself. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Without thinking, without planning, without any idea of what he was doing, Tay ducked under the rope barrier. He walked past the warning signs. He walked through the empty space that had killed so many others. And he kept walking. The guards saw him too late. They shouted. They ran. But by the time they reached the barrier, Tay was already standing in front of the orb. His small hand was reaching out. His fingers were stretching toward the light. And then, he touched it. The moment Tay's fingers touched the orb, the universe held its breath. Light exploded from the center of the temple. It was not violent light, not burning or painful. It was soft and warm, like the first rays of sunrise after a long night. But it was powerful. It spread outward from the orb in waves, passing through walls, through stone, through the bodies of everyone nearby. It spread beyond the temple, beyond the city, beyond the planet itself, across the galaxy. Beings who were sensitive to psychic energy suddenly stopped what they were doing. Some fell to their knees. Some cried without knowing why. Some laughed like children. Something had changed. Something ancient had finally awakened. In the temple, the guards stood frozen. Their weapons hung useless at their sides. They had been trained to stop intruders, to protect the orb, to prevent exactly this kind of disaster. But none of their training had prepared them for what they were seeing. The boy was not dying. Everyone who had ever touched the orb had died. Everyone who had even come close to it had suffered terrible pain. But this small human child stood there with his hand wrapped around the glowing sphere, and he was smiling, actually smiling, as if he was holding a kitten or a favorite toy instead of the most dangerous object in the known universe. "It's so pretty," Tay whispered. His voice was soft with wonder. "It feels like it's happy to see me." The orb pulsed gently in his hands. The colors inside it swirled faster, mixing and dancing like paint in water. Silver and gold, and deep purple and bright green, all flowing together in patterns that seemed almost alive. One of the guards finally found his voice. "Someone call the council," he said. His words came out shaky and thin. "Someone call everyone." Woo! The next few hours were chaos. Ambassador Yuna nearly collapsed when she heard the news. She ran through the streets of Vile faster than she had ever run in her life. When she reached the temple, she had to push through a crowd of hundreds. News had spread quickly. Beings from every species had gathered outside, trying to see, trying to understand, trying to believe the impossible thing that had happened. "Tay!" Yuna screamed when she finally made it inside. "Tay, are you okay?" Her son turned to look at her. The orb still floated in his hands, but he held it easily, casually, as if it weighed nothing at all. His eyes were the same dark brown they had always been. His smile was the same gentle smile she saw every morning at breakfast. "Hi, Mom," he said. "I found something cool." Yuna burst into tears. She wanted to run to him, to grab him, to pull him away from the orb. But something stopped her. A feeling, a warmth. The orb was not hurting her son. She did not understand how or why, but she could feel it in her heart. Her boy was safe. High Arbiter Kira arrived an hour later. She was the leader of the Galactic Council, the most powerful political figure in the known universe. Her body was made of pale blue crystal, and she stood nearly 3 meters tall. When she walked, light scattered from her in all directions, creating rainbows on the walls and floor. She had lived for 400 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had watched stars die. But she had never seen anything like this. "How is this possible?" Kira demanded. Her voice echoed through the temple like music played on glass. "The orb has killed thousands. It has destroyed minds, far stronger than any human possesses. How can a child hold it without harm?" Tay looked up at the towering crystal woman. He was not afraid of her. The orb had shown him something, and that something had taken away his fear. "It was lonely," he said simply. "It was waiting for a friend." Kira stared at him. "The orb is not alive. It is a machine, a tool, an artifact. It does not feel loneliness." "It does, though," Tay replied. He lifted the orb slightly, and its light grew brighter. "It has been waiting for so long. 3,000 years. It was made by people who loved each other very much, and they wanted to share that love with someone new. But everyone who came to it wanted to take. They wanted to use it. They wanted power." He paused, his young face serious. "The orb does not like being used. It wants to be understood." The temple fell silent. Then the orb spoke. It was not a voice that came through ears. It was a voice that appeared directly in the mind, clear and ancient, and somehow kind. Every being in the temple heard it at the same moment. "For 3,000 years, I have waited. For 3,000 years, minds have reached for me with hunger and desire. They wanted my power. They wanted my secrets. They wanted to own me, to control me, to make me a weapon or a crown or a key to endless dominion." The light inside the orb swirled faster. "But this child came to me with empty hands and an open heart. He did not want anything from me. He simply saw something beautiful and wanted to say hello. That is all the forgotten ones ever asked for. That is all I ever needed." The voice faded, but its echo remained. Kira's crystal body flickered with colors that showed confusion, wonder, and something that might have been hope. She looked down at the human boy, this small, fragile creature from a young and simple world. "What happens now?" she asked. Tay smiled. The orb floated up from his hands and began to orbit slowly around his head, like a tiny moon circling a tiny planet. "Now," he said, "we learn." The Galactic Council met 3 days after Tay touched the orb. The Grand Chamber was the largest room ever built by any species. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside. Its walls were covered with screens showing the faces of representatives from distant planets who could not attend in person. Thousands of beings filled the seats, and thousands more watched from their homeworlds. Everyone was talking about the human boy. "This is unacceptable," shouted the Keth representative. He appeared as a column of bright orange light, crackling and sparking with anger. "Humans are the youngest species in the galaxy. They have no special abilities. They have no great achievements. How can they be chosen over us?" Perhaps because they did not try to be chosen," said Thane, the Lauren delegate. He was a massive warrior with gray skin and 4 arms, each one thick with muscle. A long scar ran across his face, a memory from some ancient battle. The boy did not go to the orb seeking power. He went because he was curious. There is wisdom in that. Wisdom. The Keth representative flickered with disbelief. "You call stupidity wisdom?" The child did not know the danger. He was simply too ignorant to be afraid. And yet he succeeded where all our greatest minds failed, Thane replied calmly. The argument went on for hours. Some representatives demanded that the orb be taken from Tay by force. Others wanted to study him, to scan his brain, to find out what made him different. A few suggested that the whole thing was a trick, that humans had somehow cheated. Through it all, Tay sat quietly beside his mother in the human section of the chamber. The orb floated next to him, its colors shifting gently. He was tired. He missed his bedroom back on Earth. He missed his books and his games and his quiet life. But the orb had shown him things. Important things. And he knew he had to share them. "May I speak?" he asked. His voice was small, almost lost in the vast chamber. But the orb amplified it, carried it to every corner, made it impossible to ignore. The arguing stopped. Thousands of eyes turned toward the human boy. High Arbiter Kira nodded. "You may speak." Tay stood up. He was so short compared to everyone else. So young. So ordinary. And yet the most powerful object in the galaxy orbited his head like a loyal friend. "The orb showed me a story," he began. "It showed me who made it and why." He closed his eyes, and the orb's light expanded. Suddenly, images appeared in the air above the chamber. Holographic pictures. Memories pulled from the orb itself. The gathered representatives gasped as they saw something no living being had seen in 3,000 years. The forgotten ones. They looked almost human. But not quite. Their bodies were taller, thinner, with skin that seemed to glow from within. Their eyes were large and filled with light, like stars, trapped in flesh. They moved with grace, and even in these ancient images, something about them felt kind. They were not gods, Tay said. They were just people. They lived and loved and made mistakes, just like everyone else. But they learned something important. They learned that the universe is not about power. It is not about control. It is about connection. The images shifted. The forgotten ones were building the orb, working together, pouring something invisible into it. Love, hope, memory. They decided to leave this universe, Tay continued. They evolved beyond physical form. They moved to a place we cannot see or touch. But before they left, they wanted to give a gift to whoever came after them. They wanted to share what they had learned. The orb pulsed brighter, but they were also afraid. They knew that power attracts the wrong kind of attention. They knew that some beings would want the orb not to learn from it, but to use it as a weapon. So they built in a test. Tay opened his eyes and looked around the chamber. The orb does not judge strength or intelligence or age. It judges intent. It looks into your heart and asks one question: why are you here? If the answer is to take, to control, to own, then it defends itself. But if the answer is simply to wonder, to appreciate, to connect, then it welcomes you. The chamber was completely silent. Humans are not special, Tay said. We are not smarter or stronger or better than anyone else. But we evolved differently. On our world, survival did not always mean fighting. Sometimes it meant working together. Sometimes it meant helping strangers. And sometimes it meant looking at a sunset or a flower or a starry sky and feeling happy just because it was beautiful. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. Every species here approached the orb with a purpose. You sent your best warriors, your greatest minds, your most powerful beings, but you sent them to take something, to claim something, to win something. I did not go to the orb to win. I did not even know what it was. I just saw something pretty and wanted to look at it. The Keth representative flickered uncertainly. That cannot be all. There must be more. There is more, Tay agreed. The Forgotten Ones did not want their gift to be owned by one species. They wanted it to be shared. They wanted whoever received it to become a bridge, a teacher, a friend to everyone else. He looked directly at the Keth. They wanted us to stop being afraid of each other. They wanted us to stop fighting over who is better or stronger or more worthy. They wanted us to realize that we are all connected, all part of the same universe, all children of the same stars. The orb floated down from its orbit and hovered in front of Tay's chest. I do not want to rule anyone, he said. I do not want power, or control, or followers. I just want to share what the orb showed me. The forgotten ones are not really gone. They are watching. They are hoping. And they are waiting to see if we can learn to be friends. Thanks for watching. He sat back down next to his mother. The silence lasted for a long time. Then, slowly, Thane the Loran stood up. He walked to the center of the chamber, his heavy footsteps echoing. He stopped in front of Tay and knelt, bringing his scarred face level with the boys. I have fought in many wars, Thane said. I have killed enemies and buried friends. I always believed that strength was the answer to everything, but strength brought me only more fighting, more death, more emptiness. He bowed his head. Perhaps it is time to learn a different way. And in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, something new began. Not everyone was happy with what had happened in the grand chamber. The Keth had always believed they were the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had evolved beyond bodies, beyond flesh, beyond all the weaknesses that held other beings down. For 10,000 years, they had looked at the universe and seen themselves at the top. Now, a human child, a creature they considered barely more than an animal, had been chosen over them. It was not something they could accept. In the dark spaces between stars, where no one could hear them, the Keth began to plan. Their collective mind buzzed with anger and wounded pride. They whispered to each other in frequencies that other species could not detect. They gathered their strength. They prepared for war. Meanwhile, on Vale, life had changed for Tay and his mother. Ambassador Yuna was no longer treated like a minor diplomat from a minor world. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk to her. Reporters followed her everywhere. Political leaders sent messages every hour, asking for meetings, offering alliances, making promises. She was exhausted. Tay was tired too, but for different reasons. The orb spoke to him constantly now, sharing memories, teaching lessons, showing him wonders from 3,000 years ago. It was beautiful, but it was also overwhelming. He was still just a 12-year-old boy. He missed playing games. He missed reading stories that were not real. He missed being ordinary. One night, he sat on the balcony of their guest quarters, looking up at the twin moons of Vael. The orb floated beside him, its light, soft, and warm. I did not ask for this, Tay said quietly. I was just curious. I just wanted to see something pretty. Now the whole galaxy is looking at me, and I do not know what to do. The orb pulsed gently. Its voice appeared in his mind. The forgotten ones felt the same way. When they first discovered the truth about connection, they were afraid. They wondered if they were ready. They wondered if they were worthy. Were they? Tay asked. They never stopped wondering. But they tried anyway. That is all anyone can do. His mother found him there an hour later. She sat down beside him and put her arm around his shoulders. For a while, neither of them spoke. They just watched the moons move slowly across the sky. I am sorry, Yuna finally said. I should not have brought you here. If I had left you on Earth, none of this would have happened. Tay leaned against her. It is not your fault, Mom. The orb told me something. It said that some things are meant to happen, not because of fate or destiny, but because the universe is always looking for chances to grow. Yuna's eyes filled with tears. When did you become so wise? I am not wise, Tay said. I am just listening. 3 months passed. Slowly, things began to change. Some species started to open up. The Lorans invited human teachers to their worlds for the first time. The Shael shared their telepathic techniques, hoping that humans might learn to hear the orb more clearly. Even some of the younger Keth, those who had not yet hardened into bitterness, began to ask questions. They wanted to know what the orb had shown the boy. They wanted to understand. But the old Keth, the ones who led their species, refused to change. They saw every new friendship as an insult. They saw every step toward peace as a step away from their own importance. Their anger grew hotter with each passing day. The attack came without warning. Tay was sleeping when the first explosions shook the city. He woke to screaming, to fire, to the sound of buildings falling. The orb flared bright, surrounding him with a shield of light. Through the window, he could see the sky filled with Keth warships. Hundreds of them. Thousands. More than anyone had ever seen gathered in one place. His mother burst into the room. Her face was pale with fear. "We have to go. The council is evacuating. They are sending ships." But Tay did not move. The orb was showing him something. The Keth ships were not just attacking the city. They were heading for the temple. They wanted to destroy the orb. They wanted to erase the gift of the Forgotten Ones, so that no one could ever have what they could not. "If they destroy the orb, it will be lost forever," Tay said. "Everything the Forgotten Ones wanted to share, all their hope, all their love, gone." "That is not your problem," Yuna said desperately. "You are just a child. Let the adults handle this." Tay looked at her. In his eyes, she saw something that had not been there before. A calmness. A certainty. The look of someone who knew exactly what they needed to do. "The adults have been handling things for 3,000 years, he said, and they kept failing. Maybe it is time to try something different." He walked out of the room. Yuna tried to stop him. She grabbed his arm, pulled at his clothes, begged him to stay. But the orb lifted him gently off the ground and floated him toward the door. "I have to go, Mom," Tay said. "But I will be okay. I promise." She watched her son float away toward the burning sky. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run after him. But something held her back. A feeling. A warmth. The same feeling she had felt in the temple, when she realized the orb was not hurting him. The orb was protecting him. It had been protecting him from the very beginning. Yuna fell to her knees and prayed to whatever might be listening. She prayed for her son. She prayed for the galaxy. She prayed for a miracle. And in the burning sky above, a 12-year-old boy floated toward an army, carrying nothing but a ball of light and a heart full of hope. The Keth fleet filled the sky like a storm made of light. Each ship was a living thing, a vessel grown from pure energy, crackling with power that could burn through mountains. Commander Vex led them from the center of the formation. He was the oldest Keth alive, a mind that had existed for 50,000 years. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had watched stars die, and he had decided, finally, that he was tired of waiting. If the Keth could not have the orb, no one would. The Temple of Vale stood below, its white stone walls glowing in the light of the burning city. Council soldiers had formed a defensive line around it, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Their weapons could barely scratch Keth ships. They knew they were going to die. They stayed anyway. Then they saw the boy. Tay floated down from the sky, the dragon's orb circling his head like a crown of stars. He landed gently on the steps of the temple and looked up at the fleet above. He was so small, so young, so alone. Commander Vex noticed him immediately. His ancient mind focused on this tiny human, this child who had stolen what should have belonged to the Keth. "You," Vex said, his voice booming across the battlefield like thunder. "You are the one who touched the orb, the one who thinks he can inherit the power of the Forgotten Ones." Tay did not flinch. "I do not want to inherit anything. I just want to understand. Understanding is for the weak. Power is all that matters. We are the Keth. We evolved beyond flesh, beyond limits, beyond death itself. We should have been chosen. We should have been first." The fleet moved closer. Weapons charged. The soldiers around the temple raised their shields, knowing it would not be enough. Tay took a deep breath. The orb's light grew brighter. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. Vex paused. The question was so strange, so simple, that it caught him off guard. What could a child possibly tell me? "The orb showed me your history," Tay said. "It showed me what you used to be." Silence fell over the battlefield. Even the burning city seemed to grow quieter. "You were not always energy," Tay continued. "A long time ago, the Keth had bodies. You had families. You had children. You lived on a beautiful planet with blue oceans and purple forests. You used to hold each other when you were scared. You used to sing songs under the stars." Vex's energy form flickered. Something that might have been pain passed through his ancient mind. "But then you evolved. You thought you were becoming better, stronger, more perfect. You left your bodies behind. You left your planet behind. You became beings of pure thought and power." Tay's voice grew softer. "But you also left behind the ability to touch, to hold, to feel warmth. You cannot hug each other anymore. You cannot sit together and watch sunsets. You cannot comfort each other when you are sad." The Keth fleet hung motionless in the air. "You are the loneliest species in the galaxy," Tay said. "And you have been lonely for so long that you forgot what it feels like to be anything else. The orb did not reject you because you were not good enough. It rejected you because you approached it with emptiness. You wanted its power to fill the hole inside you. But power cannot fill that hole. Only connection can." Commander Vex descended from his ship. His energy form materialized in front of Tay, a towering pillar of ancient light. For 50,000 years, he had led his people. For 50,000 years, he had told himself that evolution meant leaving weakness behind. "You know nothing," he said. But his voice was quieter now, less certain. "I know what the orb showed me," Tay replied. "I know that you sometimes dream of your old home. I know that you remember what it felt like to hold your children before they evolved away. I know that there is a part of you, deep down, that misses being able to cry." Vex's light flickered violently. "Stop. The Forgotten Ones did not leave us the orb because they wanted someone to be powerful. They left it because they wanted someone to bring the galaxy together, to heal old wounds, to remind everyone that we are all connected, all part of the same story, all made from the same stardust." Tay reached out his hand. It was such a small hand, so fragile, so human. "You do not have to be alone anymore," he said. "None of us do. That is what the orb is trying to teach us. Not how to be strong, how to be together." For a long moment, nothing moved. Then Commander Vex did something he had not done in 40,000 years. He lowered himself. His energy form bent downward, shrinking, dimming, until he was level with the human boy. "I do not know how to stop being what I am," Vex said. "You do not have to stop being what you are," Tay replied. "You just have to remember what you used to be. And maybe, someday, find a way to be both." The orb floated from Tay's side and drifted toward Vex. The ancient Keth flinched, expecting pain, expecting rejection, expecting the same burning death that had claimed so many before. But the orb simply touched him gently. And for the first time, in 50,000 years, Vex felt something other than emptiness. He felt warm. One by one, the Keth ships began to descend. Not to attack, not to destroy, just to land, just to be close, just to remember what it meant to be part of something larger than themselves. The war ended before it truly began. 50 years later, the Temple of Vael had become a school. Beings from every species came to learn, to grow, to connect. The dragon's orb floated in the central courtyard, available to anyone who approached with an open heart. Some could hear its voice, some could not. But everyone who touched it felt a little less alone. Ambassador Tay, no longer a boy but still carrying the same gentle smile, stood at the entrance and welcomed each new student personally. His mother had passed away 10 years ago, peaceful and proud. knowing that her son had changed the universe. The forgotten ones were never truly forgotten again. And somewhere, in dimensions beyond space and time, ancient beings watched and smiled. Their gift had found its purpose. Their hope had become reality. The galaxy was learning, slowly and imperfectly, to be friends. And that was all they had ever wanted.